श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विष्णु भानु सुत देवे प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna everyone. So we were discussing the 18th chapter. I believe we had to do verse number 59. Can I share my screen? Is everyone able to see my screen?
Coming through, yeah.
All right. So can recite this verse after me. Yad ahankaram ashritya
Yad ahankaram ashritya
na yotsayati manyase
na yotseti
manyase
mityaisa vyavasayaste
mityaisa vyavasayaste
prakritistvam niyokshati
prakritistvam niyokshati.
Yad ahankaram ashritya
Yad ahankaram ashritya
na yotsayati manyase
na yotseti manyase
mityaisa vyavasayaste
mityaisha vyavasayaste
prakritistvam niyokshati
prakritistvam niyokshati.
Yad ahankaram ashritya
Yad ahankaram ashritya
na yotsayati manyase
na yotseti manyase
mityaisha vyavasayaste
mityaisha vyavasayaste
prakritistvam niyokshati.
prakritistvam niyokshati.
Anyone else would like to recite?
Yad ahankaram ashritya
Yad ahankaram ashritya
na yotsa iti manyase
na yotsayati manyase
mityaisha vyavasayaste
mityaisha vyavasayaste
prakritistvam niyokshati.
prakritistvam niyokshati.
Yad ahankaram astriya
Yad ahankaram ashritya
na yotsya iti manyase
na yotsya iti manyase
nityaisha vyasyasaste
mityaisha vyavasayaste
prakritistvam niyokaksyati.
prakritistvam niyokshati. Anyone else?
Yad ahankaram asritya
Yad ahankaram ashritya
na yatsya iti mannase
na yotsya iti manyase
mithyasya vyavasayate
mityaisha vyavasayaste
prakritistvam niyashakti.
prakritistvam niyokshati. Anyone else? Okay. So let's recite the synonyms. Yat,
Yat,
if,
if,
ahankaram,
ahankaram,
of false ego,
of false ego,
ashritya,
asritya,
taking shelter,
taking shelter,
na yotsye,
now yatsye,
I shall not fight,
I shall not fight,
iti,
iti,
thus,
thus,
manyase,
manyase,
you think,
you think,
mithya eshah,
mithya eshaha,
This is all false.
This is all false.
Vyavasayah,
Vyavasaya,
determination.
determination.
Te,
Te,
your.
your,
Prakriti,
prakriti,
material nature.
material nature.
Twam,
Tvam,
you.
you.
Niyokshyati,
Niyakshati,
will engage.
will engage.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. Purport. Arjuna was a military man and born of the nature of the Kshatriya, therefore, his natural duty was to fight. But due to false ego, he was fearing that by killing his teacher, grandfather, and friends, he would incur sinful reactions. Actually, he was considering himself master of his actions, as if he were directing the good and bad results of such work. He forgot that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present there, instructing him to fight. That is the forgetfulness of the conditioned soul. The Supreme Personality gives directions as to what is good and what is bad, and one simply has to act in Krishna consciousness to attain the perfection of life. No one can ascertain his destiny as the Supreme Lord can. Therefore, the best course is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and act. No one should neglect the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the order of the Spiritual Master, who is the representative of God. One should act unhesitatingly to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That will keep one safe under all circumstances. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे. Read the translation one more time. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. Can everyone else go on mute, please? Thank you. So we are coming to towards the conclusion of the Gita Yagya that we have been doing. Actually, just 20 more verses to go almost. This is the 59th verse. There are total 78 verses in the 20, almost 20 more verses remaining for us.
A question up front. When you finish it, are you going to start with the first one again?
I know. What do you want to do?
Can we start from the first again, if possible, as a request?
I think so. We will do that. But we'll have to check, just confirm one more time with Pyari Prabhu. Most likely we will do that. We'll start with the first.
Yeah, please
chapter,
convey
first
our
verse.
request to him from my behalf also.
Absolutely, Mataji. So Krishna says actually that, so we all have been discussing the Bhagavad Gita, especially in this COVID situation. Every day we are having Bhagavad Gita classes. And there is, every, you will see that in the Vedic literature, after every important section of that Vedic literature, there is a Falashruti that comes repeatedly in Srimad Bhagavatam also. After different chapters, the Falashruti is given. That is the effect. What do you attain after reading this? So towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter itself, Krishna is going to give the Falashruti of the Gita. So he says two very important things. He says one who studies the Gita. Studies means who really analyzes the Gita, very scrutinizingly. He is actually doing Jnana Yagya. He is doing, my Aarti with his intelligence. That is what Krishna says. And he says that one who just listens, he may not even understand this. Just listening to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he will be become free from all sinful reactions, and he will attain the planet of the pious. That is the three topmost planetary systems within the material universe. So that is also a very auspicious result. So that is the Falashruti of the Gita. So we have almost all of us have been almost every day, just except Saturday and Sunday, we have been discussing Gita. But Saturday we have the Shri Shopnishad, which is also one of the very important Vedic literature, and Sunday we have our Sunday classes. So in one or the other way, we are connected with Gita almost every day since this COVID situation has started. So that's good, and let's try to keep up the momentum. So what has happened so far in the 18th chapter is Krishna has talked about Karma Yoga, and he has mentioned how a Karma Yogi develops Gyan through his sadhana. So in this connection, Krishna analyzes the three modes very exhaustively. So the three modes have been analyzed by Krishna in the 14th chapter, in the 16th chapter, also in the 17th chapter, and then again in the 18th chapter, he analyzes the three modes very exhaustively. Then after that, Krishna had talked about the Varnashram Dharma, within which a person can practice Karma Yoga, but offer the work itself to Krishna, not just the results, offering the work itself to Krishna. So karmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vidnati manava. That is the crucial aspect of that of this 18th chapter. Then Krishna says that once a person has become sufficiently detached, then he can go to the yoga rudha stage. Nashkarma, the verse that comes is Nashkarma siddhim parama sannyasena adhigacchati. Then he can actually become a renunciate. And by renunciation, here it is basically the hint is towards progressing towards Jnana Yoga. Then Krishna describes the sadhana of a renunciate. We discussed that this is the only place in the Gita where the sadhana of a Jnana Yogi is described, how he performs his sadhana, and through this sadhana, he comes to the Brahman platform. And after coming to the Brahman platform, then he can attain bhakti. That is what Krishna had said, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, and then Mad Bhakti Labhate Param. So that is what we discussed. I think that was the 54th verse. And then Krishna says in the 55th verse, then after he says that, so actually, we'll come to the 55th verse, but actually Krishna also says in this chapter that Arjuna, you don't have to go through all this. You can directly come to my bhakti. You can directly perform bhakti, So there is a gradual progression towards bhakti, but bhakti is so glorious that you can directly perform bhakti and you can be, you can attain the supreme destination. So before we go any further, I just want to mention two things here. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's a Vaishnavacharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnav lineage. So he has written a very elaborate commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And in his commentary on verses 54 and 55, he talks about the destination of the Gyanis. So he basically says that there are four categories of the Gyanis. So the first category he mentions is that, the first category is those Gyanis who do not take, those who do not absolutely perform bhakti. They don't do bhakti at all. If you remember in the 13th chapter where Krishna was talking about the qualities of a Gyani, he mentions that performing bhakti is also one of the quality of the Gyani. So what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says is that their spiritual progress is actually hallucinatory. They are hallucinating that they are progressing in spiritual life. Actually, they are not progressing. And Srila Prabhupada also quotes this in his purport to, I believe it is verse 9.18. Prabhupada says very clearly that those who don't understand Krishna, their progress is either partial or hallucinatory. The same word Prabhupada also uses in his commentary. Then Chakravarti Pad explains that there is the second category, which is the pseudo-gyanis. So pseudo-gyanis is basically they understand that, bhakti is like a tool. It is, you can perform bhakti, but the forms that are there, so you can perform bhakti as a tool to reach Brahman. And once you have reached Brahman, then you can reject bhakti and you can reject Bhagavan also. So those are the Mayavadis. We have discussed about this many times, and there are direct verses also, 7.26, 9.11, which talks about the Mayavadis and their destination. So the third category he talks about is, he says the third category is the Brahmavadis. So Brahmavadis, he says that they practice bhakti, but they are very attracted to Brahman. And they are not offensive to the form of the Lord. They are just not concerned with the form of the Lord. They are so attracted to Brahman, and they do perform bhakti, but they ultimately achieve Sayujya Mukti. Sayujya Mukti is basically they attain Brahman. And the fourth category, he explains very nicely. He says the fourth category is that these Gyanis, they do perform bhakti as part of their Jnana sadhana. Mai Chananya Yogena Bhakti Avyabicharini. Twice it comes in the Jnana section of the Gita, 13th chapter and 14th chapter. Bhakti Avyabichari, unbreakable, unflinching devotion. This comes twice, in the 13th and 14th chapter. But by some fortune, some great fortune, they come in contact with the devotees, and by their contact with the devotees, they become devotees. So in our tradition, we hear about two prominent examples of such cases. One is the speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, who is Shukdev Goswami. He was a Jnani, but then he hears Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he becomes so attracted to the personal form, the personal Brahman, to Bhagavan, that he becomes a devotee himself. And then he himself recites the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And the other example that is given in the Bhagavatam itself is the four Kumaras. So for the four Kumaras, I think it's the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where this pastime comes of that Jai Vijay pastime, where Jai Vijay, they are being cursed by the four Kumaras. So these four Kumaras, although they are Gyanis, but they have also heard about this Vaikuntha. So they decide to visit this Vaikuntha planets, and they go, and they have been stopped by Jai and Vijay. So they basically give a curse to Jai and Vijay, and when all this commotion is happening on the door of Vaikuntha, so Lord Narayan himself comes out to see what's happening. He also hears from his other servants that these four Kumaras have come, and there is an altercation that is happening between the four Kumaras and the Jai and Vijay, the doorkeepers of the Vaikuntha. And then he himself comes out. And then when he comes out, so this is the first time that the four Kumaras were going to see. They haven't seen Lord Narayan at all. It is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that when the Lord Narayan is a little distance away, the aroma of the tulsi leaves from his lotus feet, that aroma, when they enter the nostrils of the four Kumaras, it is mentioned in the Bhagavatam that although their consciousness was always fixed on Brahman, it was never deviated, but the aroma was so enchanting, so captivating, that for the first time their concentration on Brahman was disturbed. They came out of their Brahman consciousness, and then they were like, what is this? And then when they saw Lord Narayan, it was so captivatingly beautiful, they couldn't even hear what Lord Narayan is saying. Whatever Lord Narayan said, they just nodded their heads without even understanding even a single word. And they were so captivated by looking at the Lord Narayan that then from that point on, they became devotees. So these are the four categories that is mentioned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary. So after a person attains bhakti, so we were discussing the 54th verse where Brahma Bhut Prasannatma. So the next verse, the 55th verse, it is mentioned that after a person attains bhakti, then by performing bhakti, he comes to know Krishna. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Only by pure devotional service can I be known as I am. So what does it mean to know Krishna? Can anyone answer that question? Bhaktya mam abhijanati. What does that mean? What does it mean by understanding Krishna? How do we understand Krishna?
A devotional service.
Yeah, but Krishna says something different or something additional to it.
Is it Janma Karma Chame Dipam?
You're getting very close. Basically realizing the tattva about Krishna. That. I'm sorry?
Tattva.
Yeah, tattva. So what is the tattva about Krishna? What is the tattva?
Saha means.
Sorry, Mataji, I can't hear you.
No, I'm not saying anything. So
Okay. So the tattva about Krishna is mattaha partaram na anyat, aham sarvasya prabhava, and then brahmano hi pratishtaham, Krishna is the supreme. There is no greater truth than Krishna. Krishna is the foremost. So that is the tattva. And yes, janma karma chame divyam is also true, but the fundamental thing that we have to realize is that Krishna is supreme. There is no reality greater than Krishna. So actually, after this, Krishna basically talks about that, you can perform, you don't have to go through this whole yoga ladder. You can directly perform bhakti. And how do you directly perform bhakti? He says, Sarva karmanya api sada kurvano mad vyapashriyaha. sarva karmani api sada kurvano, you just work in my consciousness always. And then 18.57, very classic verse, he says, chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matparaha, chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya, basically uh, all your activities that you do in your consciousness, offer those activities to me, sanyasya, you just become free from that, you offer it to me. And then mat paraha, make me the prime goal. And then he says something more interesting. He says buddhi yogam upashritya, buddhi yoga. So we have heard about bhakti yoga, we have heard about dhyana yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga. But this buddhi yoga is very interesting. This has come twice earlier. It has come in the second chapter, then it has also come in the 10th chapter, in 10.10, I believe. So buddhi yoga is a compound word. So buddhi means intelligence, yoga means to connect. So it is that intelligence by which we can connect with the Supreme Lord, or it is that yoga which gives us intelligence. Both the meanings are possible. Buddhi yoga. So you take shelter of buddhi yoga. So Prabhupada translates buddhi yoga as devotional service, as bhakti. So which is true. So ultimately in this connection, what it means is buddhi yoga means bhakti yoga. We have to perform devotional service to the Lord. And Krishna will conclude with that in verses 18.65 and 66. And after that comes the classic verse again, 58th verse. Mat chittaha sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi. Krishna says, mat chittaha, if you become conscious of me. And then he says, sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi. Sarva durgani means all the obstacles of the conditioned life, you will, by my mercy, prasad, mat prasadat, by my mercy, you will tarishyasi, you will glide over them. So he doesn't say that obstacles will not come in the life of the devotees. Obstacles will come. But the devotees, if they are always conscious of Krishna, they will be able to glide over those obstacles. And the lives of the Pandavas are, very, they are like the proof of this. Actually, if you look at the lives of the Pandavas from a material perspective, it was like a disaster. If you look at them, they were the heirs for such a glorious dynasty, such a glorious kingdom. But when they were actually born in a forest. Although they were princes, but they were born in the forest. And soon after their father passed away. And after that, they went to the kingdom to basically take back their rightful, whatever, because they were also the heirs. So they had the right over the kingdom. But there were so many conspiracies that were done. Bhima was, there was a conspiracy to kill Bhima. Somehow Bhima actually survived by mercy of Krishna. And after that, there was this Varnavrat, where the house of flag was burnt, and there was a whole conspiracy to kill all of them. And after that, they basically decided that let's not get into all this. So they go incognito. And after that, they come back, and then they have been given the Khandav Prasth. So Khandav Prasth is actually like a barren piece of land. But with the mercy of Krishna, they actually make it such a thriving kingdom. And after that, they perform this Rajasuya Yagya again by the mercy of Krishna. But soon after, they have been cheated, and their everything has been taken away. And not only that, their wife has been so grievously insulted that the insult that was done to Draupadi, it was actually, Draupadi was just a tool. It was an insult to the Pandavas. Duryodhana wanted to show Pandavas down. So he insults Draupadi in that way. So that was such a grievous insult for them. And after that, they have to go to forest. And then the 1 year period of that, they have to live incognito. That was such a, in one way, humiliating for them. So they had to work as servants of a king. And Arjuna was the epitome of manliness. And he had to actually hide his manliness and become a eunuch. So many things they had actually gone through. But by the mercy of Krishna, they actually glide through everything, and ultimately they come victorious, and they actually get their kingdom back. So even if we look at the the battle of Kurukshetra, so I'm just narrating few pastimes, because last time Omyo Prabhu complained that we don't discuss any pastimes, we only discuss philosophy. So he was not happy. So let me discuss a few pastime, which basically will, also they are in context of what we are discussing. So actually, if you look at the war that had happened of Kurukshetra, there are many times where the Pandavas were in great danger. So the foremost, that is the most um, gruesome of the incidents that had happened was the killing of Abhimanyu. And after Abhimanyu had been killed, when the 6 warriors had, together they had attacked Abhimanyu, and he was killed violently and mercilessly. So when Arjuna comes back from, to his camp, so he hears the news of Abhimanyu's passing away, and then he becomes very furious. He first laments, and then he becomes furious, and then he takes a vow that tomorrow, if I don't kill Jayadratha, I'll burn myself. I'll not live. I'll commit suicide. That's the vow he takes. And when Arjuna takes such a vow, all the Pandavas, they all blow their conches, and even Krishna blew his conches hearing the vow of Arjuna. But later, when things settle down, Krishna comes to Arjuna, and then he says, Arjuna, why are you so rash? Do you know what kind of vow you have taken? He says that tomorrow the only objective of the Kaurava force will be to stop you from reaching Jayadratha. The whole of their Kaurava force would be after you. They will not let you reach Jayadratha. And what have you done? This is such a serious thing. So Arjuna at that time, he says that, Krishna, why are you so anxious? Why are you so, he says, you know my strength and I know your strength. So, he is actually in complete Krishna consciousness. He says, I know your strength, so you will do something. And actually it is mentioned in the Mahabharata that night Arjuna went to and retired in his camp, but Krishna was very anxious. He couldn't go to his camp. He was just walking around and he was thinking what to do. And it is mentioned in the Mahabharata that actually he summoned Daruka. Daruka was the charioteer of Krishna, if you know. And Krishna was not fighting in the Mahabharata war. That's why there was no role for Daruka, but he summons Daruka. And Daruka comes over there and he tells Daruka that, Daruka, such a serious thing have happened and Arjuna has taken this vow. And then he says that if tomorrow Arjuna is not able to reach Jayadratha, then I cannot see Arjuna suffering and dying like that. Just keep my chariot ready. I will jump from Arjuna's chariot to my own chariot and bring the best of my weapons. Keep my chariot ready. Actually, Krishna doesn't need any weapons, but he says, just bring my best of my weapons and keep everything ready. And Daruka is so touched looking at Krishna. His concern for Arjuna was so great that he says, don't worry, my lord, I'll keep everything ready. So that was the concern of Krishna. So he is always there for his devotees. And then actually, we know the pastime where Arjuna was able to kill, but it was such a dramatic scene where, the sun was setting and, Krishna actually covers the sun, and then later he takes the sun out. And then Arjuna is able to kill Jayadratha. And then another such thing happens when when Bhima's son is killed, Ghatotkach. Actually, what happens is when we know the pastime where Ghatotkach was killed by Karna. Karna uses his Shakti weapon to kill Ghatotkach. So when Ghatotkach is killed, Krishna becomes jubilant after that, and he almost starts dancing. And Arjuna sees Krishna, and he is bewildered. He says, Krishna, this such a glorious son of Bhima has been killed, and he has done so much service for us. How can you be so happy on his death? So at that time, Krishna tells Arjuna that, Arjuna, since the time Karna had got the Shakti weapon, I've been very anxious about it. So Arjuna had not thought anything great about the Shakti weapon. Arjuna also had a lot of celestial weapons with him, but the Shakti weapon was given to him by Indra. So Indra had come in the disguise of a Brahmin, and then he asked for his Kavach and Kundal. So he had taken his armor and his earrings. So, and then, but Karna realizes that actually he's not a Brahmin, he's some demigod. So then Indra comes in front of him, and then he says, I'm pleased with you. Ask me something. So at that time, Karna asks for Shakti weapon from Indra. So because he thinks that I would be able to use Shakti weapon against Arjuna. So Krishna says that, this Shakti weapon, you don't realize the power of Shakti weapon, but I have been very anxious since the time Karna had received this weapon, and that Shakti weapon had made Karna invincible, and more than that, it is more than it making Karna invincible, you had become susceptible to death by the hand of Karna. So he's actually then Arjuna asked, but there have been so many encounters between me and Karna. So why did Karna not use the Shakti weapon if that was the case? So actually, and then Krishna smiles. So Krishna just says that actually, I have been trying to avoid your confrontation with Karna. I've been trying to, I dodge whenever Karna will come, he will dodge he will take the chariot in some other direction. And there were few instances where there was a direct altercation between Karna and Arjuna, but Arjuna realized, Mahabharata says, Arjuna realized that, Krishna had said in the Bhagavad Gita, Mattah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. By me comes knowledge and forgetfulness. So actually, Krishna had made Karna forget about the Shakti weapon he is sitting in Karna's heart also. So Arjuna realizes that, this is what Krishna had done actually. So when Krishna was happy about this, so he was not happy because Ghatotkacha has been killed, but Ghatotkacha has done this service actually for Arjuna, that, Karna had to use the Shakti weapon, and now this was like the last, obstacle remaining for winning the battle of Kurukshetra. Actually, there is just before the final battle that happens between Karna and Arjuna, there is a conversation that happens between Karna and his charioteer Shalya. Actually, we know the pastime that because Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna had become the charioteer of Arjuna, and the Kauravas know that Arjuna has the best charioteer, and Shalya also is known to be a very good charioteer. Actually, these charioteers, so although they are sometimes called as Suta is generally used in a sarcastic way, but Sutas are also Kshatriyas, but they are like a lower caste Kshatriyas. So actually what happens is, even a Kshatriya, they also know how to ride the chariots, because at times when the battles are happening, when most of the times the opponent would try to kill the charioteer of his opponent, because once the charioteer has been killed, then this particular warrior will become immobile. So these Kshatriyas who are warriors, they will also learn how to ride the chariot, so that in case the charioteer is killed, they can themselves drive their chariot. So Krishna and Arjuna, so Krishna was the best charioteer, and Krishna and Arjuna realized that their team has, the first time that Krishna had become the charioteer of Arjuna was during the Khandav Prastha, when this Agni comes and requests Krishna and Arjuna to burn the forest because there were so many demons. So at that time, Krishna tells Arjuna that I will become your charioteer and you fight. So that time Krishna and Arjuna had realized that they are a great team when Arjuna is the warrior and Krishna is the charioteer. So during the battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna proposes that I'll become your charioteer, and that way we'll become invincible. So Pandavas had realized that actually they are both Krishna and Arjuna, they are a great team together. So they say that we have our best warrior, which is Karna, and we also need a very good charioteer for him. So Shalya, they basically deceived Shalya. Shalya is actually he is the relatives of Nakul and Sahadev. So they deceive him, and then he has to become the charioteer of Karna. So there is a conversation that happens just before the final war between Karna and Arjuna, where Karna asks Shalya that, Shalya, what would happen if I die tomorrow? What will you do? What will happen if Arjuna would kill me tomorrow? So Shalya says that if Arjuna kills you, then I'll pick up my own weapons and I will fight against your aggressors, and either I'll kill them or I'll lay down my own life. So and actually, so after hearing this, Karna becomes grave, and actually that is what happens. When Shalya also dies later in the war of Mahabharata. But the same discussion happens between Krishna and Arjuna also. Arjuna asks the same question to Krishna. He says, Krishna, what if I die tomorrow? What if Karna kills me? So Krishna becomes very angry. He stands up from his, from the chariot, and then he says, "Oh Arjuna," he says, the sun would become, dry. The oceans might become dry. The earth might crack apart. The stars may fall down, but rest assured, Karna would never be able to kill you. And if somehow Karna is able to kill you, then I'll pick up my Sudarshan and I'll kill Karna, and not just Karna, I'll kill the whole Kaurava army. And then not just the Kaurava army, I'll assume the form of, at the time of the final destruction, I'll assume that form and I'll destroy the whole universe. He says, rest assured, Arjuna, no harm will come upon you. So that is the mercy of Krishna actually. So when Krishna says mat prasada tarishyasi, that actually he means that. So there are other instances also. Once what happens is after this war is over, Yudhishthir Maharaj goes to meet Krishna in the morning. So he is amazed to see that Krishna is, he is kind of in meditation, and he is in trance. And Yudhishthir was thinking that actually all the yogis, they meditate upon the Supreme Lord. So who is he meditating upon? So he becomes a little bewildered and he waits over there. So after some time, Krishna comes out of the trance, and then he understands the question that Yudhishthir has. Without even Yudhishthir asking, he says that, he says, oh Yudhishthir, I have been meditating upon that glorious son of Ganga, Bhishma. He is about to depart. Because of him, he had defeated all the warriors on the battlefield. And until Bhishma was there on the battleground, there was no hope for us to win the war. But somehow we were able to defeat him, and now it's time for him to depart. And when he departs, there will be a great ocean of wisdom will depart along with him. So he says, let us go to him and hear from him that wisdom. So when Krishna proposes like that, Arjuna becomes grave. So he says that I won't be able to go there. I won't be able to see him in that condition. Because of me, he's lying on the bed of arrows. And then he says, he remembers that actually when I was a small child, I used to play. And then after playing, I used to come and climb into his lap. And I used to be so dirty, and his white clothes will become dirty because of, my dirty hands and legs. But he would lovingly carry me on his lap, and I would play with his beard. And then, I'd say, I'll tell him, Father, Father. And, he would lovingly say that I am not your father. I am actually your father's father. So that was one second, my battery is dying out. So he remembers that conversation actually. So, and after that, we know all the Pandavas go to meet Bhishma when he's about to depart. And then the whole Anushasan Parva is the instruction that is given by Bhishma Dev to the Pandavas, basically to Yudhishthir Maharaj. And those instruction was about Raj Dharma. That is the duty of the king. So they are like encyclopedic instruction. It is said that the biggest section in the Mahabharata is the Anushasan Parva, the instruction that Bhishma Dev gives to Yudhishthir in the Bhagavatam. It is covered in I would say 15 to 20 verses. But the actual instruction that was given by Bhishma Dev to Yudhishthir, that is given in the Mahabharata. It's like encyclopedic. So many verses are there. So we know that the past time when Arjuna's heart was not there in the war. So, Bhishma Dev's heart was also not there in the war because he didn't want to kill the Pandavas. But Duryodhana was constantly goading Bhishma Dev that you are not attacking the Pandavas. You are killing everyone except the 5 Pandavas. You're not you're not doing anything for them. So he becomes very irritated with the constant goading of Duryodhan, and then he also wants to see the love of Krishna. So he tells you Duryodhan just before on the 9th day, the night, actually in the 8th day of the night of the 8th day. So he says that so he takes out 5 weapons, 5 arrows, and then he gives it to Duryodhan. He says that with these 5 arrows, I'll kill each of the Pandavas tomorrow. And he gives those arrows to Duryodhan, and he tells Duryodhan, tomorrow morning, give these arrows to me, and I'll use the same arrows to kill all the. And he takes a vow. So these arrows I'll kill. So he wanted to see what Krishna would do. So we know that Krishna actually sends Arjuna, and Arjuna actually takes those 5 arrows from Duryodhan and he brings it back. So next day morning, when Bhishma asks Duryodhana that give me those arrows, but Duryodhana didn't had those arrows. So then he further wanted to see what Krishna is going to do. How would he protect his devotee? So Bhishma fights so ferociously on that day that Arjuna is completely overpowered, and his heart is anyway not there. It comes to a point that if Arjuna won't fight full-heartedly, then Bhishma would kill him. And Krishna sees this, that this Bhishma is going to kill Arjuna. He takes a vow that if either I'll kill Arjuna or Krishna will have to lift a weapon. So what Krishna does is he actually jumps out of his chariot, and then Arjuna suddenly sees that Krishna has disappeared from the chariot. Where did it go? And then Krishna, whenever he is in anxiety, when he wants to kill someone, he always remembers Sudarshan Chakra. So at that time he was so much in anxiety, he forgot about his Sudarshan Chakra. He actually picked up a wheel that was there. It was a broken chariot, and there was a wheel of the chariot. So he picked up that wheel, and actually Krishna would have, threw that wheel right from where he was standing. But he thought, what if this is not Sudarshan? What if it misses? So he picks up that wheel. It's such a big wheel and very heavy. Krishna runs and charges towards Bhishma at that time. And then he tells Bhishma, actually when Arjuna sees this, he shouts, Krishna, stop. But Krishna didn't stop. And then he actually tells Bhishma that, oh Bhishma, it is because of you that this war is happening. When he says that when the king is misdirected, it is the duty of the minister to counsel him and to bring him to the right path. But you failed in doing your duty, and that's why this war is happening. And then Bhishma says, Krishna, I tried my best, but I was waiting for this moment. To die at your hand is the perfection of life. And he puts aside his bow. And then he waits for Krishna to come. And then Arjuna actually sees this is happening. And he jumps from the chariot and he runs and is not able to catch Krishna, but he makes a leap. He jumps and then he just grabs the feet of Krishna. Krishna was so furious that Arjuna was like dragged along with Krishna. And it is mentioned in the Mahabharata that Arjuna also had Kshatriya. He was a Kshatriya, had strong legs. So he actually threw his leg inside the ground, and there was a hole created in the ground. And then it is like that hole stops Arjuna. It acts like a stopper, and then Krishna is, with that force, Krishna is stopped. And then Arjuna says, Krishna, I promise I would fight and I'll kill Bhishma Dev, but you please don't lift any weapons. So although Acharya explained that technically the wheel of the chariot is not a weapon, but still Krishna was charging towards Bhishma to kill Bhishma Dev. And when the Pandavas go to meet Bhishma Dev, at that time Bhishma Dev offers very heartfelt prayers to Krishna. And then this incident Bhishma Dev remembers. So in his prayers he also mentions about this incident, that you had charged towards me. Although we would, if someone would attack us with a weapon to kill, with an intention to kill us, we'd become so frightened. What if this person would have killed me? But Bhishma Dev is remembering that. I was so. He says that I was so excited to see you in that form, charging towards me with a weapon in your hand, and he was like in a welcome pose so that Krishna would come and kill him. So that is the love of Krishna for his devotees. So when he says mat chittaha sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishyasi, he actually means this. He says that by my mercy you will be able to glide over all the obstacles of conditioned life. And later he puts a condition. He says that, but if you don't act like this, ataha chet tvam ahankaran na shrosyasi vinakshyasi, you will fall down. And this verse that we are discussing today, it is in continuation to that verse. He says, if you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. So yad ahankaram ashritya na yotsya iti manyase mithyesa vyavasayaste. So vyavasayaste. So this vyavasaya refers to what Krishna had said in the second chapter, vyavasayatmika buddhi. So he says that if you don't have this kind of determination, if your determination is false, then you will be under the material energy. So either you can be under the spiritual energy, you can be in the spiritual consciousness. And when we say, Prabhupada also says that you have to actually spiritual consciousness means you have to, Krishna himself is present over there, and Krishna actually is instructing Arjuna to fight. So we have to accept the instructions of the Supreme Lord and also our spiritual master, who is the representative of the Supreme Lord. So, but if you do not act in this consciousness, then you will be falsely directed. Falsely directed means you will be under the material consciousness, and then material nature will take over. So actually, so here Krishna is saying that, you are saying no to fight this war, but ultimately you will, by your nature, you will have to be engaged in this warfare. So sometimes people say that, if um, Arjuna had to anyway fight the war, then why did Krishna had to speak the whole Bhagavad Gita? The answer that is given by the acharyas is that the consciousness has to be right. Arjuna, Krishna gives the right consciousness to Arjuna, that in what consciousness you have to fight the war. It is not for my own victory, it is for actually for doing your own duty. And actually in this case it was Krishna's mission also. So Krishna had come with a mission to relieve the earth with all these powerful people who were there. Kali Yuga was about to start, and he didn't want any of these powerful people to be present at that time. So he wanted to basically rid the earth of this. Most of the kings were demoniac. We know that the forces on the side of the Kauravas were much more than the forces on the side of the Pandavas. So Duryodhana had a demoniac mentality, and there were people who were supporting him. That means they were also kind of supporting like a person who had demoniac mentality. So Krishna wanted to rid the earth of this unnecessary people who were there who had demoniac consciousness. So it was one of the instructions of Krishna also to Arjuna to fight. So the right intention has to be there, right consciousness has to be there, and that is the purpose. Actually, Krishna speaks this Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And actually, if we see, one of the other reason that is mentioned by the acharyas is that there will be no other option for. He says, by your nature you will have to be engaged in warfare. What it also means is that actually all the options have already exhausted. So it is mentioned by the acharyas that when someone is repeatedly offending you, there are 3 or 4 different ways to deal with such a person. First is that you tolerate that. If someone has offended you, tolerate that, and then just tolerate it and let it go. That is what actually, and these Pandavas, they use all these options. So the tolerate part was actually, if we see, when Bhima was, this conspiracy was done by Duryodhan to poison Bhima and then throw him in the river. So at that time, Bhima also knew that actually Duryodhana did this, and Kunti knew, Yudhishthir knew, but they tolerated this. They said that, okay, that's let's not antagonize the Kauravas. So they basically let it go. The second time when the Varnavrat incident happened, so the second option that is given by the acharyas is that you walk away from the situation. That if someone is repeatedly offending, you just walk away from there. So when this Varnavrat incident happened, so they realized that if we go back again, they will again try to kill us. So they say that there's no point in going back. Let us just walk away. So they go incognito. Everyone thinks that there were 5 other people who were there at that time in that house of flag, and they were killed. So these Pandavas, they leave and they go incognito. So they walk away from the situation. The third is that you retaliate, and the fourth is you actually forgive. So these 2 options were also used by Pandavas when Draupadi was so grievously disrespected. At that time, the Pandavas realized that a certain line has been crossed now, and then you have to do something about it. So after they come back from the 14 years of living in forest, they actually were preparing for war, but they sent Krishna as the messenger. And Krishna says that if you agree to these conditions, then we are ready to forgive you. We'll forget everything that had happened in the past, and then and they have asked for just 5 villages. Such a small condition they had put. There could be nothing better for the Kauravas. They could have just given those 5 villages, and everything would have been good. But Duryodhana was so adamant. He said, I am not going to give land even on that which can measure the tip of the point of the needle. So he says, I won't even give that much of land. Forget about 5 villages. So this is like a again, it was more like a disrespect. So this forgiving option did not work, and the fourth option was to retaliate, basically deal with the situation. So actually there was no other situation, there was no other option left at that time. So when Krishna said that, you have to be engaged in this warfare, either you, right now you are saying that you will become a mendicant and you'll go and beg, but he says that you will have to come back and fight this war anyway. So Chakravarti Pad explains in his purport, he says that actually he puts it a little sarcastically. He says Krishna is kind of hinting that, Arjuna, you are saying that you will become a mendicant, but when you will go and ask for alms, when you will beg for alms, and if someone refuses to give you alms, you will become furious because you are a Kshatriya by nature. And at that time, you will pick up your sword. And then you say, I will come at that time. And you pick up the sword for a dharmic purpose. I'll come and taunt you. I'll come and laugh at you. So that is how Chakravarti Pad explains this verse. So I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments or corrections about what I said today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for keeping my request. And my comment was for overall all the lectures. You always share stories. You always share stories and all the real life examples, and make your lecture very interesting. We all know that. And then one thing I would like to mention and see if everybody in the call agrees with me. Just my observation. You few days ago you told me that you are more inclined to Tatta than Rasha. Remember? You like Tatta more. But what I found that last Balaram Jayanti, you mentioned some pastime, and also yesterday you mentioned some pastime, and that made me think that you really relished those pastimes. It was like a masterpiece. I mean, I personally loved it, really loved it, Prabhu. So I'm thinking again, not to put down others, but I'm thinking in ISKCON, I've heard from many speakers, like you and two other speakers, when it comes to pastimes, you three are the best. Like nobody comes close. That's just my observation. And so you just not only choose the correct pastime, you relish it and makes others relish too. So having said all those things, I just would like to put a humble request, when you Bhagav, if appropriate, when appropriate, if you could insert here and there some sweet pastimes so that we can hear the nectar and release those pastimes. That's all, Prabhu. Thank you. And just one last thing I'd like to say, Pyari Prabhu gave an example, in Gaura Lila, there was a Brahman. He doesn't even know how to recite. And then when hearing Bhagavad Gita, tears was coming out of his eyes. And then Mahaprabhu asked him, why are you crying? And he responded, because every time I hear Bhagavad Gita, I don't understand anything. I just see in front of me Supreme Lord. He's became the charioteer of his devotee, and that melts my heart. So you are my teacher. I should not say you what to do, but I'm just saying, I personally think for me the most effective is like a mixture of Tatta and Rasha. Like you give a definition and give an example, and that hammers the idea. That works for me. I don't know. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for that comment. But I just wanted to mention one more thing. Jiva Mataji also mentioned that point to me, and I found it very interesting that ours is a Brahmanical movement. It's a preaching movement. So when it comes to preaching, it is actually, it is basically the tattva that has to go inside the minds of people. So when they realize that who Krishna is, because the pastimes are all there. Even if you look at there are so many series that are made, which basically they enact the different pastimes very beautifully. And we also have Little Krishna series, which is there. I remember one incident that had happened to me. I was a boy at that time. I would think maybe about 13-14 years old, and there was so we had our cousins visiting us, and this was the first time that they were visiting us at our home. And incidentally, what had happened is our neighbor that time, they were, in India we have this Akhanda Ramayana. So the whole 24 hours they will discuss the Ramayana. So our neighbor had this Akhanda Ramayana, and they have professional reciters who would come to recite these Ramayana. So they had invited us, and then we all had gone in, including the family which was visiting us. And they were narrating very nicely. They're professional reciters. And there was this incident of when Ravana abducts Mother Sita. At that time, Jatayu comes and fights with Ravan, but he is no match to Ravan. And then he's kind of wounded severely, and then he falls to the ground. And then Lord Ram comes, and there's a beautiful exchange that happens between Jatayu and Lord Ram. So I saw this, my cousin sister, she was about, I would say, 8 to 10 years elder to me. She was hearing and she was crying. She was literally crying. And I was thinking, such a great person she is. And I was not crying, and I had no emotions at that time. So I was thinking, she is such a big devotee. She's crying after hearing this. And I felt really great about it. And then after that, few days later, we were watching, there was a movie that was coming up on the movie. You might know, there's a Shah Rukh Khan movie, Kal Ho Na Ho, where Shah Rukh Khan dies at the end because of cancer. So, and she saw that she was crying more bitterly after seeing that movie. So I was thinking that what happens is, if you just hear the pastime without the tattva, it just becomes a kind of a entertainment for us. It is more, we could say that it is more like a pious kind of entertainment, but it is, we only think of it nothing more than an entertainment. So tattva has to be there. When you understand that, okay, Krishna is so great, Lord Ram is so great, yet he is having such a beautiful exchange with his devotees, then we would realize that he is great, but he's also sweet. So both has to be there. As you rightly said, there has to be a good mix of tattva and rasa. But out of the two, in the case of a preaching movement, tattva is more important. That tattva has to go into because rasa, generally people who come from that background, India and the countries there, the Hindu, basically who have grown up in Hindu families, they have heard all these stories, they know all these pastimes that have happened mostly. What they don't understand is the tattva, the philosophy, that what is true and what is not true, what is the position of Krishna, and what is the position of others. So that has to go inside the brain.
Yes, Prabhu. Just one. Yes, I think last time I make a comment, I could not clarify it. Yes, I do agree 100% with both you and Jiva Mataji. Both has to be there. Just that I don't know how it might work for many people. Doesn't work for me. Sounds boring. Like Pyari Prabhu, I love his lecture, and one of the reason I love his lecture, every one sentence he says, he mentioned a quick pastime. Of course, he doesn't put that much emotion like you do, but he does mention some pastime that makes it so easy and interesting. And we all know that if you give a definition and example followed by it, that like hammers the idea. And that I completely understand the reason for our movement is a Brahmanical movement, but that also brings another question. Okay, because Mahaprabhu said, Antaranga Sange Karo Rasha Ashadan, Bohiranga Sange Karo Nam Sankirtan. So that means, like, when you are with the devotees, internal association, then do the Rasha Ashadan. But in our congregation, I don't see, I asked so many times, both you and Ragashinda Prabhu. So I understand for external people, Bhagavad Gita, but what about internal? Like, why don't you discuss Gaura Lila? Like, not outsiders, insiders. Whoever wants to join, join. What's stopping us? That I don't understand. Sometimes that disturbs me a lot. Sorry. Thank you.
I understand your emotions, Prabhuji. Anyone else would like to comment on that?
I mean, I don't quite understand what Prabhuji means by rasas, as opposed to tattva. I mean, we do
Basically,
every now and then. Huh?
yeah. I think his point is that we keep hammering the same point. Krishna is the supreme person. Krishna is the supreme person, but we don't discuss his pastimes.
But until we get that, like, it's like my husband always says, like, your lectures are the same. You're not this body. You're not this body. You're not this body. The point is, I still haven't not gotten the fact that I'm not this body.
I think one day.
So until I get that basic fact, everything else that is built upon that is useless, right? Seriously, I mean, I still haven't gotten the fact that I'm not this body,
Mataji, I completely agree. I mean, me neither. I think very few of us did. But look at this. We all love Prabhupada. Why do we love him? Is it because, like, he gave all the books? Those books are he did not invent anything. Those are existed well before him. From the time immemorial. We all love Prabhupada because all the sacrifices he made for us. He came and so this is like pastime, right? When you hear about this,
I understand,
melts
Prabhu.
our heart.
Things shouldn't be totally dry. I mean, we don't have to make everything totally dry. I mean, that's why inserting some practical examples, inserting, your personal experiences, inserting some story that you've heard or something that pastime of Srila Prabhupada or any of the devotees or Krishna's or any of the pastimes from any of the scriptures are nice to be inserted every now and then. I don't disagree with you at all. But like Srila Prabhupada says, like, rasa is very difficult to understand until we get the basics, and that is only for the very advanced devotees to converse about, but at the same time, I mean, we have been given Bhagavad Gita, we have been given Bhagavatam, and we have Bhagavatam classes in the morning, and we have the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, and you are joining that 8 o'clock class of the Chaitanya Charitamrita,
Yes,
from Laguna Beach, yeah. And they are also starting with Tattva first, you know what I'm saying? Rupanuga Prabhu said, the first part of Chaitanya Charitamrita is Tattva, and the later part is Rasa, he said, so you have to go through the Tattva before we get to the Rasa, Otherwise it becomes sentimentality,
I agree, Mataji. I think like I'm not good at talking, but I think Ganapati Prabhu understood my point. Maybe he could help me.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. And I'm not denying that every now and then making it, I mean, nobody says we should have a dry lecture without some, some practical examples that hammer things home, So that I fully agree. But
it reminds me of what Sundar Gopinath Prabhu told me once. He said that he was in India and he was with a devotee friend and they were getting late for the Sunday lecture. So I think he was driving or something and he was driving very fast. So his devotee friend asked, why are you in a hurry? Why are you driving so fast? So he said, because we are going to miss the lecture. So he said, so what? The person will not, if you reach on time, he's not going to say that Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has to say that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So why are you in such a hurry? So don't be in such a hurry. Something like that he mentioned. It was nice when he was telling me.
It's like, don't worry, you're not going to miss anything. All this is, you're not this body.
Pranath Govind Prabhu, right?
I think Sundar Gopinath Prabhu said that. If I
heard from Pranath Govind Prabhu always.
Yeah, Pranath Prabhu, I think. Yeah, Pranath Prabhu then, yeah.
What did he say? They're not going to say that Lord Shiva is God or something?
Yeah, he still say the same thing. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
That sounds like Pranath Prabhu.
Right.
I mean, that reminds me of Pranath Prabhu's joke about the calendar.
Yeah.
Someone who was impersonal and he says, you're God. See, if your picture was on this calendar, nobody would buy this calendar.
Yeah, that was so funny. And he said that so nonchalantly.
I know, I'm sure he said it in such a way that I think was it Rasraj Prabhu who said that he couldn't have, I don't know who told us the joke.
I told Mataji in one of the classes.
Oh. No, somebody else told also besides you. I can't remember who.
Yeah. During when Pranath Prabhu was leaving, then I told that on that.
Yeah, I think it was Rasraj Prabhu when Pranath was leaving. Like the whole temple cracked up at that.
And Gitamala, that was Ravi. You know Ravi?
Yeah, I think Ravi, yeah. It wasn't Rasraj Prabhu, yeah.
No. The Ravi was there when Pranath Prabhu talked with him about your picture here. Nobody is going to.
But who related the story? Was it Rasraj Prabhu? I forget who related the story. But
I did tell this once, and
but I didn't hear it from you. I think I heard it from somebody else. Yeah, that when Pranath Prabhu was leaving, somebody else said that.
I think Pyari Prabhu Jivataji is trying to say something. I saw them unmuted.
It's not easy to get a word in edgewise. I just want to say that we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, and first you have to go to the first 10 cantos, or first 9 cantos before you get to the 10th canto, where it's Krishna's pastimes. There's a reason for that. And then there are these bogus, not necessarily, but generally bogus people who just go straight to the 10th canto and talk for 7 days about Krishna's pastimes. But unless you understand how Mahavishnu is an expansion from him, and how all these universes come from the pores of Mahavishnu, and this whole universe is, this universe here gets devastated up to the higher planets, so many times in the life of Brahma, and it's all just one breath of Mahavishnu, and it's just an expansion of Krishna. I mean, unless you understand the greatness of Krishna, when you hear certain things that Krishna does, you may misunderstand it, especially with the gopis. So it's really important to know the philosophy. And as Gita Mala mentioned, how we're not our bodies, we're not these bodies. I know every one of us intellectually understands how we're not this body, but how often do we act as if we were this body? How much are we attached to all the bodily expansions? We're still really very much on the bodily platform. So we have to understand certain basic things. I mean, before we can really relish the pastimes of Krishna, especially Krishna with the gopis, or even Krishna with his wives. I mean, Krishna with the cowherd boys is kind of easy to understand. They're just playing. But there's certain things people misunderstand. Like, for instance, Christians, that's one of the things that they criticize about Krishna. He's got, one, I'm just thinking of something that happened, and I'll tell you in a minute. But Krishna has, 16,108 wives. And one time, Valmiki was at the airport saying to somebody, some Christian who was criticizing him, and he said something about, yeah, look at what you got. You just got this one wife. That's it. So God, 16,108. And then one of the wives of the the wife was saying how, come on, let's go. And then Valmiki told him, this is where we're on the airport distributing books. I'm just telling you this just because I kind of was laughing a little, and I want you to know what I was laughing at. But he was distributing books, and the wife of the husband was looking at the book, and the wife is dragging him along. And then Valmiki told him, why don't you just throw off the plane? The husband said, that's a good idea. But it's really important. We really do have to get the basics down before we go on. Just like you got to get a foundation down before you build a big skyscraper, before you build any building. If you don't have a good foundation, then later on, even in Connecticut, we're having so many problems down on the shoreline with foundations breaking. Your whole house is finished. You have to have a good foundation. So that's why it's important. And anyone who hears Krishna's pastimes or hears Krishna's words, if you're actually on a high platform, a spiritual platform, there's no difference with hearing Krishna's words, his philosophy that he's speaking to Bhagavad Gita, or hearing hearing about his pastimes. If someone who's actually on the transcendental platform doesn't make a distinction that this is nice and this I don't need to hear. We need to hear it all. Anything in relation to Krishna is not different from Krishna, and we should hear it all. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you so much. Just 2 follow-up questions. First question is, Prabhu, not question. How about if we skip the Krishna's pastime with his wife or gopis and discuss everything else? That's first question. And second question is, Prabhu, I think I'm keep being misunderstood. I didn't mean no I mean, no way I meant like, to discuss only the pastime, both, like, emphasizing tattva, but, like same way you do in your lecture, you always throw some pastimes, like very quick, but, we can have a pastime. And just like, my second question is like, if we don't, but I'm just saying, if we keep discussing tattvas here, like, what will happen if some devotee stays in our congregation whole his life, and then just keep hearing when he's going to release the rasha, I mean the pastime.
Nobody in our congregation does what? I didn't hear that.
I mean to say, like, if just example, what if some devotee, someone stays in our congregation for whole life, his or her whole life, and like, keep hearing the tattas, and like, since if we don't discuss pastime, then he or she will never, like, release the pastime. And yes, I can always watch, I read Bhagavatam, I can watch, like, TV show, but again, like the way Ganapati Prabhu explained the pastimes, like in Balaram Jayanti, and I mean, and yeah, also yesterday, I'm not saying it will work for everyone else, but it really touched my heart. So like, if someone is good at releasing pastime and make others release the pastime, along
Omiya
with
Prabhu, you do
tattvas.
know that we have a 7:30 to 8:30 Bhagavatam class, right? Can you join that, or you don't have time at that time?
I have time, but the only thing is I'm in the mode of ignorance that time, under the mode of ignorance.
Because there's a lot of pastimes in Bhagavatam if you want to join that class.
Two things. One is, you mentioned, why don't we just read about certain pastimes? You just do it systematically. It was written in a certain way, and we have to read it that way. And everyone should read all these pastimes, and especially Krishna book. Although Krishna book, you can read any part of Krishna book. Prabhupada has said Krishna book, it's like a sweet ball, and you can bite any part of it, and it's all good. So Krishna book is written in such a way so you don't misunderstand the pastimes, because Prabhupada explains the philosophy along with the pastimes in Krishna book. But we do, it's not like we're not telling anyone to read these things. Everyone should read all the Bhagavatams. We're selling so many sets of Bhagavatams, but we're telling them not to jump to the 10th canto. Read the first 9 cantos first, that's all. Then you get to the nectar. Then you can appreciate it more. You really can't appreciate Krishna doing certain things he does, or how the gopis deal with Krishna. Like, you can't really appreciate that the gopis are feeling themselves inadequate, not qualified, and Krishna is now with the sophisticated woman in Dwarka, and Krishna really appreciates them. And does he ever talk to the gopi, to the woman of Dwarka, how he used to, that his friends in Vrindavan, they can't understand any of these things, because they're just simple cowherd girls. And does he ever think of us at all? And and you can see that gopis are just always thinking of Krishna, and thinking he doesn't even think of us, hoping that he does, finding out something, any news. But then you can appreciate that so much more when you actually hear, when you actually understand Krishna's position. I know everyone here understands Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but what does it mean? So we have to have both. I'm not saying just philosophy, just you're not that body, but you have both. And when you're reading the Bhagavatam, you read it from the beginning. Right now, we're reading the 10th canto, but we read it from the beginning, I don't know, several times here, and now we're reading it again, and now we're up to the 10th canto. But you go through it, canto by canto. And same, like you mentioned, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the beginning is very much a lot of philosophy in it. And then later it gets more to the pastimes. But, and I agree, I particularly relish the pastimes more than I do the philosophy personally. But when you hear Krishna's words, it's really not different. It's Krishna. So we have to try to see that. And I'm not saying you're saying we should just hear pastimes, but we have to hear them both. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it's not so many pastimes. It's just one thing. They're on a battlefield, and that's it. And then this is what they're discussing. So you don't talk too many pastimes from Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, it's really getting late. I don't want to keep everybody.
Yeah, I think people have started joining for the next call for the shloka recitation, so I think we can end here. But Omyo Prabhu, your point is valid. I think Pyari Prabhu also agreed that he also relishes rasa more than the tattva.
Thank you, Prabhu. I will release the Rasha with Pyari Prabhu only next time.
Yeah, you can have a personal class with Pyari Prabhu.
We can talk the high stuff because only me and you can understand.
You're
All
so
right.
humble, Pierre.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
I included Omyo. It's not myself. I'm not the
I
only
know,
one.
right? Yeah. All right.
Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.